Hi, Bill Faris here. Hey, did you know that grace is an active, dynamic, electric power from God that surges through your life and changes you and makes you different and makes you capable of doing things and being things you could not otherwise do or be? Well, that's what I want to talk about today. Now, let's be fair. Normally, we talk about grace, rightly so, as God's mercy, His passive favor, His kindness. I deserve judgment from God and wrath from God for my sin, but like an umbrella, God's grace covers me and delivers me from that just punishment because of God's kindness and mercy. And that's certainly a biblical way and fair way to think about grace. But in 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 10, Paul gives us another window into grace that's far more active and dynamic. He says three things about grace in that passage, 1 Corinthians 15:10. He says, first of all, that the grace of God has made him who he is. He says, by the grace of God, I am what I am. And that means that grace has changed him. It changed him from being a Pharisee and a persecutor of the church and an enemy of the church and an enemy of Christ into the greatest champion of the church of his day and a great servant for Christ. Grace did that. Grace did that to Paul. I am what I am because of grace. Second thing, he says that grace was not without effect. In other words, grace was effective. Grace was active. Grace affected me. And we can say that too with Paul, that as we plug into grace, we are affected by grace. It's changing us. It's working change and transformation in us. As we sit here today, we are being affected by grace. When you go to sleep tonight, you'll be affected by grace. When you're driving down the freeway, for goodness sake, grace is surging through your life and coursing through your being and affecting you. But the third thing Paul says about grace in 1 Corinthians 15:10 is that grace worked in him, worked hard in him. He says, I worked harder than them all, yet not I, but the grace of God in me. And now that's a pretty amazing thing to think about, that grace can do this work in us. It can change us, it can push us to new levels, to new heights, and to new experiences of being supplied by God with an energy not our own. So, as you think about grace today, I want you to hopefully think about it as amazing grace, not only because of God's mercy, but because of the dynamic, electric way it charges up our life with God's power and goodness.